Hi everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Dandy and I own the technical curriculum for data and artificial intelligence as part of Worldwide Learning. Today we'll have a look at implementing an Azure data solution, and I wanted to introduce you to Chris.
Yes, my name's Chris Tess-O'Neill and I work on Dandy's team and I write the data engineering curriculum.
So we'll have a drill down into the course and teach our Microsoft certified trainers and Azure technical trainers on how they go about delivering this course front to end, what they need to prepare for, some of the gotchas and the prerequisites.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the design concepts around it, right?
Exactly. And what we're going to start off with really is the module that should be just the introduction to the overall course, really. This should be, largely familiar to a lot of you. You probably do this yourself. You might even build your own slides for some other courses as an introductory. So, we'll show you what it's about. And there's one slide in particular that's just for your eyes only that I think is really important and that we should take you through as well.
And that's this slide, right? Is that the solution brief for
it's the
MCTs?
Presentation brief for MCTs. Now, this is hidden in every single module, right? So it's not designed to be seen by your students. The idea of this slide is to outline to you what the title is, the anticipated length of this particular presentation. And as you can see, this particular module is only between 10 to 15 minutes. The audience it's intended for. But most importantly, the purpose, right? Why are you doing this module? But when I sit down, I kind of go through a process of how should my students think? What should my students think once they've done this module? How should they feel when they've done this module? And very importantly, what should they do? What should it kickstart? So for this particular module, we look at the purpose. And the purpose, there's two purposes to this: to position the course in how it can help them to understand the data platform capabilities of Azure. And number two is to give the students the presentation materials for the exam DP200. Now, I'm not going to go through every one of these for every single module, but it's worth spending a little bit of time on this. Think. What should the students think during this introduction? They think that Microsoft can help them to build a cloud data solution specific to their requirements, and that's really important. It's got to be their requirements. This course provides the technical information that they can use to build a cloud data solution. It's also the course that can help them pass exam DP200. They should be able to feel that they're on the right course. You probably do that quite naturally as trainers anyway. You're identifying whether they've got the prerequisites or not. And they should also feel that they're on the right course to meet their own personal aims as well. What should they enable them to do? Well, from this module, they should have a clear understanding of what the agenda is about. They should understand the prerequisites that they should have to be able to do this course. And they should understand the certification requirements for that particular exam. Okay. As I say, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think it really just worthwhile spending 2 minutes to understand that on every single module, you've got this for your own benefit.
Perfect. So, how about we drill down into the course and go through the agenda, and then look at the audiences and then what are some of the gotchas and going to deliver this training, of which I actually was really excited when we'll look on what's the core understanding of data engineering? And I know this is lengthy about this course. Chris, you want to talk about that to us?
Yeah, so the intention is with this slide is not to read it word for word. You should be familiar with the content already prior to going into the classroom, right? So you should be talking about the fact that, this course is about meeting business and technical requirements for delivering cloud data platform solutions. And it's not just the platform that's important, it's also the processing, whether it's relational or NoSQL itself. So use this as a guide. It's there really. You're the focus, right? While you're teaching, you are the focus. But you know what students like? Students learn in different ways. You're providing that audible approach. Some students like to read it. I'm not a big fan, as you know, Dandy, of lots of text on a screen. This is one of the few areas where I make an exception.
Yeah, and so when I went through the design document of this course, some of the things that really stood out for me is data storage.
Yes.
Data security.
Yes.
When to use what, based on requirements, the type of data, things like batch processing and streaming data came into play, really allowing you to then define a data solution using Azure Data Services. You mentioned given a set of requirements, so I assume kind of aligning to a business requirement or some kind of case study would make sense?
Well, that was clear with the direction that you gave us, right? Not just to data engineering, but to the whole curriculum, right? We needed some way of being able to convey a story.
Yep.
And you'll see, in module 1, the case study is not just critical to module 1. It's so critical, in fact, that we've allocated specific time for you to spend on it in the training time, let alone the lab time.
Yep.
Why? Because it's the overarching theme across the entire course. Yeah.
Now, Chris, a lot of our trainers come from a world where they were using the Microsoft instructor-led training to really get into a very modular delivery, and every module could be used as a standalone.
Yeah.
The feeling I get with this course specifically is we kind of pivoted away from that, because if you're designing and implementing a data solution, there are so many dependencies across data ingestion, data storage, optimization, security. What's your guidance around delivering this? Does this really need to be seen as a 3-day instructor-led training, which of course it could be delivered in an online training modality broken down into multiple chapters and blocks, but I have to see these scores as a single unit, correct?
You know yourself, Danny, the biggest feedback we're getting from the product groups, from the customer sales and support is it's all well and good looking at these individually.
Yep.
But the biggest skills gap that there is the integration of it all together. So we made a very conscious decision to go against the grain of doing a modular approach to training. And for this particular course, there is dependencies.
Yep.
And the reason for that is that, it's not just the exam that will look at some of those integration points, but also in the real world, you have to just acknowledge that there is integration between all these technologies.
Yep.
So the case study with the course as a whole provides a cohesive story where there is dependencies between each module. So yes, you're right to point that out.
Yep. Okay. So if you look at the module outline, we got a set of modules.
Yes.
We talk about Azure for the data engineer. We talk about working with data storage. We got data ingestion, data security coming up.
Well, these two are really important, right? The first two modules, there's a temptation, isn't there, Dandy, with the first modules to go, well, this is just the introduction. We can kind of breeze through this. But actually, this introduction is really important because it really, if you want to capture the spirit of the DP200 exam, it's almost in this module. You know what I'm saying?
Yep, makes
From
sense.
the perspective that, there are parts of this course that do go in tremendous depth, right? We're giving you that depth really so that you can show yourselves off. Because for me, and Dandy, I know he's a big believer of this, when it comes to the official curriculum training, the real stars are the Microsoft certified trainers. And you could argue that, in one or two modules, maybe we go a little bit too deep, but it offers tremendous value. But I do want you to keep in mind that the spirit of the exam is really encapsulated in module 1, which is Azure for the data engineer, which gives you that high-level overview of not just how data's evolved over the last couple of decades, but an overview of the services that are in the Azure data platform, because there are literally the exam objective domain, if you look at it on the website, is you need to understand at a high level the different capabilities of the different services. Now, the identification of the tasks that are performed by a data engineer, this is really just going back to the fact that, hey, we need a mindset shift really as data engineers compared to where you may have been a database administrator, and how there's a slight different mindset there. But going back to the point that you were making earlier, Dandy, this is why we have lesson 4 right in module 1, an entire section dedicated to the case study.
So then when I look at that module 2, it says working with data storage. I see things like data lake. I go like, well, I come from this world being a traditional DBA, teaching the traditional SQL curriculum, and I go like, oh, wow, Azure data lake storage.
What does that mean?
How do I prepare for something like this?
Well, basically, you've got to understand that you've in module 1, lesson 2, you have gone through an overview of the different services at a high level. After that, we're dropping in deep dive. And the reality with Module 2 is, from an implementation perspective, it's a checkbox. It's as simple as that. The difference between blob storage and data lake store is a checkbox, right, in terms of its implementation. But in terms of use case and design considerations, there's a bit more to it. Yep. So here, you're going to look at choosing a data storage approach in Azure, where you will look at storage accounts from the perspective of blob storage, table storage, queue and file. You need to understand those differences. Yep. But more importantly, when you put that checkbox in there and it becomes a data lake store generation 2, why are you doing that, right? Yep. You know, at the end of the day, you can't query anything in a blob store without processing it into something else to query it.
Correct.
Whereas with data lake store, it's ready to be queried immediately. Yep. And that is a fundamental difference between the two. And we put that across in the MCT presentation brief, right? It's all there in the presentation brief for you, but it's wise that we call that out here.
Okay, let's have a look at some of the other modules. Wow, this is, again, kind of fascinating. It kind of, I guess I need to understand the broader picture of what we're doing with the case study. When I look at this, I go like, I just learned about data lake store. Now it talks about team-based data science, and I'm a DBA transitioning to a data engineer.
That's by design. That was very deliberate. You know, we agonized. Why? We agonized over this. So here was the decision point, right, when we were sitting as a group. Do we put a fluffy blanket around people after Module 1 and do relational data? And we just felt as a team that maybe that would be sending out the wrong message. Relational data is very important, but we felt as a team that it was possibly we need to take students out of their comfort zone a little bit. The best way to do that is with blob storage and data lake store. It's the easiest way to do it, right? But you need to know a proper use for that. And what better use of a data lake store than with Azure Databricks? So it flows really nicely in the lab, right? And you'll see this, where in the lab, you're going to upload files into a data lake store in Module 2. And in Module 3, you're going to fire up Databricks, consume those files that you uploaded to Data Lake within a team-based data science project.
Okay, makes sense.
So we kind of wanted to go, hey, you may have come from a traditional SQL Server background. This is how data engineer. This is how data engineering is different within the first 3 modules. And with Cosmos DB, it gave us a great opportunity to go with NoSQL solutions, right? So here we've gone from data science into dealing with unstructured data and how, or semi-structured data, and how we can deal this.
How do I think about this though? Because I see you have me going into Data Lake Store, you have me going into Databricks, then you have me going into Cosmos DB.
It's quite overwhelming, right?
Are you kind of like tackling this from a case study perspective that tells me this is the use case scenario that leans to Cosmos DB?
Yeah, I'm really glad you've brought that up. I'm glad you've brought me back on track, because the glue that brings all this together is without doubt the case study, which is why you need to spend time on Module 1. You got to bear in mind, but by the time we get to Module 4, we are on probably the morning of the second day. You know, this, I think the presentation brief for Module 1 is, how should the students feel? They feel overwhelmed. That is normal. It's your job by the end of 3 days to demystify all this to the point that they're not experts in it, but the DP200 exam doesn't expect them to be experts, but they are comfortable with understanding the differences.
So that would basically mean that when I take this training class and I get out of it as a student, the outcome should be, I just took this training class, I feel comfortable about all these Azure data services, and that should help me in designing a solution based on business requirements, get into some of the implementation aspect of it. It's not going to make me a deep specialty expert into, let's say, Cosmos DB or Databricks, but it's given me enough to be a data engineer and understand the overall design, make some of these choices given requirements, so actually you can go to my technical decision maker and advise them on like, hey, we should consider Cosmos DB for this use case scenario. we should consider storing our data in data lake stored versus storing it in plain text files whatsoever.
If I was to sum it up, at the end of this course, you should understand the capabilities of each of the technologies and how to implement it.
Perfect.
You may struggle with design, but that's why we have another course. But we're leading you to the design and that. Okay.
Yep. Well, relational data is still there.
5.
I feel comfortable with that module. Very comfortable.
Breathe. It kind of got to the point where it's like, hold on a minute, we've just hammered them, right, for 4 modules, right? Let's give them a breather. So we do that with relational data stores in the cloud. However, SQL database only represents 5% of the exam objective domains. As a result, it's only one topic. We know that many of your students will be very, very comfortable. Don't get me wrong, you will get students coming on who may be from an open source background, who may not be comfortable with this. But really, the true focus of this is in SQL data warehouse.
But what this is not, how to manage SQL database, how to apply permissions, how to implement security whatsoever, right?
Exactly. And as MCTs, you will get students who want to know more about SQL database. From a certification perspective, that is not necessary. From a training perspective, we have other courses that do that on Microsoft.com/WAC-Learn.
And some of that will fall into more of a data management curriculum.
Exactly, and we're talking about the data management curriculum at the moment. But then one of my favourite ones is Module 6, because I've been doing this for years. And I did this, 2.5, 3 years ago, where I was doing real-time streaming analytics with doing sentiment analysis with Twitter data.
Okay.
So with this module, you're explaining the difference between data streams and event processing, how you can do that with event hubs, not IoT hubs. That, let's be very specific there. That's a separate area. And how we can use stream analytics to actually process that data. And we'll discuss in more depth how that lab can be very helpful.
Do we cover anything around the difference between IoT hubs and event hubs at all?
At a high level, we will do, but we don't deep dive into IoT hubs.
Yeah,
I would say we give you enough to understand the capability difference between the two so you can answer questions.
So it's really about, you have data coming in, streaming data.
Correct.
How do you process it?
Correct.
Read it from the event hub.
From an event hub perspective.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. And then we look at batch movement in Module 7. So we've just done streaming, right? Which is really nice, right? Because you've gone in a kind of a platform and a processing. So with the streaming in Module 6, you're moving from platform into processing into Azure Data Factory to do the actual batch data processing as well, looking at how it works, creating linked services and data sets, creating pipelines and activities. And, you know, we know there are wizards with this, you know, but we give you the JSON behind it in more depth as well.
Yeah. I started with DTS in SQL 2000.
You're showing your age now.
5, something like that. When we
SQL
think about
7, I think it was, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been ages ago.
Well, it's earlier than that.
Then we transitioned to SQL Integration Services.
Yeah, 2005.
Do we have anything that's going to go like, hey, now within the world of cloud, Azure Data Factory?
Of course. At the end of the day, you know, you are not going to turn around to a customer and say, hey, Azure Data Factory is the thing to do. Go forget the 20-year investment you've just done in DTS and SQL Server integration. So they would ask you to leave, and quite rightly so. At the end of the day, you've got to understand that a lot of organizations have put a lot of time, money, and investment in SQL Server integration services solutions over the last 15 years.
Which I could run as part of the Data Factory
Correct.
runtime,
So we talk about the integration runtimes and how that can be used to take advantage of those investments.
Okay, then we get into security.
Really important. Really. This could be a 3-day course in its own right. I've got to be honest with you. But in the spirit of the exam and the fact that we're not experts, we are covering not just the fundamentals, but really what you need to look at from a storage account perspective, how you secure relational data stores versus non-relational data stores, and you know, let's talk about streaming data, right?
Pretty much understand the differences.
Exactly, understanding the capability and the differences of that. Yeah.
Okay. Last module.
Yes, which is monitoring and troubleshooting data storage and processing.
Okay.
And here we're looking at the monitoring capabilities within Azure and some common troubleshooting for data storage issues, data processing issues, and of course, managing disasters and how you can recover from that.
Okay. So, wow. Yeah.
There's a lot.
Pretty good, I think, good coverage on what we did from like an exam objective where, I mean, our team has been core to the subject matter expertise on that as well.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well,
Drilling down into each of the modules?
Well, I think really you need to understand your audience, right? So with the audience, this is really important, right? Because I know there's a lot of people confused as to what data engineering actually means.
It's not a DBA role.
No.
Okay.
Okay. So, but this course is for people who are data professionals, architects, business intelligence professionals, right? We know that these individuals will have the prerequisites inherently to do this course.
Yep.
But we also think that the secondary audience to this is for developers. Those that develop cloud applications, and they just want to understand the various data platform technologies that they can utilize with their applications as well.
Okay.
Yeah?
Any prerequisites that we need to think about?
Yeah, so Azure Fundamentals, critical.
I have a couple of flavors on that.
Okay.
I know
Yeah,
I have that available on WAC Learn as a self-paced, 9 or 12 modules.
Yeah, I believe so.
About 9 hours of content.
Yeah.
There's also a certification exam associated with it.
Yeah. There is.
Should I consider the certification certificate to be really a core requirement, or how do you feel about that?
I took it. So I have actually taken Azure Fundamentals. At the end of the day, I took the Azure Fundamentals because I wanted to understand what was being covered at that level.
Yeah.
So I would highly recommend that you take the Azure Fundamentals.
As a trainer or as a student?
As a trainer.
Okay.
I think, you know, try walking in their shoes. I'm a big believer in that, right? So fundamentally, if you're going to be teaching any of our courses really, whether it's data, AI or data science, doing Azure Fundamentals as a trainer will tell you what they should walk into understanding.
Yeah.
And then you have the authority to turn around and go, I am not covering resource groups. That's in Azure Fundamentals. I am not covering subscription management because you've got a lot to cover in this course in 3 days. We don't have the time to do that.
Well, then I kind of feel that when I look at this Azure Fundamentals, I go, well, a lot of the things that we have here, what's the purpose? It's not necessarily related to data.
With the Azure, so don't get me wrong, there is crossover in Azure Fundamentals with the storage accounts, right, in Module 2, right?
Makes sense.
But that's kind of, because storage accounts may not just be used for data. They might be used to store images for a website. So you can see why
Which might come back in the AI engineering as well.
Exactly, exactly. So it can be useful there. So yeah, please do take the Azure Fundamentals exam.
Okay, perfect. So how about that? Next step, we'll dive into each of the modules.
Let's dive into each of the modules and take a look at them.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
We'll see you there.